You're listening to the Sticks in the Six podcast. Here are your co-hosts, Andrew Forbes, Peter Barricini, and Alex Hobson.
Well, welcome, folks, to episode 175 of Sticks in the Six. We're doing a little afternoon Wednesday show here as we both get ready for puck drop on the 2024-25 season for our beloved Toronto Maple Leafs. New hockey cards are back at Tim Hortons. We knew that meant the start of the NHL season. We've had a few games under our belt already around the league. Some very exciting stuff. Some interesting storylines already with, 3 or 4 games coming out. But before we get into all that fun stuff, all the news and stuff that's breaking around the NHL right now, Peter, how you doing this week, buddy?
Doing great. Like you said, hockey is back. Tim cards are back. That's basically the gateway to hockey season basically returning right now. Again, everything's in full swing. Junior hockey, I went to go see the London Knights and Mississauga Steelheads on Saturday. Brampton Steelheads. Sorry, they moved. And let me tell you this. I was talking on Prospect Corner about getting a live viewing of Porter Martone. Holy, this kid's a gamer. This kid lays it out on the line nonstop. Like 3 points in that game. Scored a beautiful goal as well. I was shorthanded. Taunted the crowd. Was getting into it physically, wanted to drop the gloves. This guy has the passion, man. He's got energy galore. He's got the skill. There's a reason why I have him in my top 3, second at the moment right now. But it's going to be hard to drop him further down the list. I think he's going to be one of those prospects that's going to get a lot of more traction. He's leading the OHL in points right now by 1. But seeing that kind of player live, when we saw him play at Helenka Gretzky's U18s, we saw on the TV how electrifying he was. In person, he's just as dynamic.
Oh, absolutely. And you mentioned the London Knights. Obviously, me being in London, that is the team of my focus when I'm here. When we're talking OHL. Man, I think they're running it back this year. They got Denver Barkey back. Mm-hmm. They got Bonk back. They've got Easton Cowan back. They've got O'Reilly back. It's going to be a fun year for the London Knights in the OHL. I think it's going to be. We're going to see them run it back, anyways. But like we mentioned off the top of the show, the NHL is back. The season is kicked off. The quest for the cup now begins. Mm-hmm. The Florida Panthers are looking to defend their title, their first ever Stanley Cup, and they did so well last night against the Boston Bruins, defeating them 6-4. Obviously, the storyline around the Boston Bruins was Jeremy Swayman. Jonas Korpisalo was the guy who came in and kicked off the year in between the pipes for the Boston Bruins. Not a great outing for Jonas Korpisalo, so it's a good thing that they got Jeremy Swayman locked up. And Jeremy Swayman locked up for 8.5 over 8, or was it 8.5 or 8.25?
8.25.
8.25. So 8.25 over 8 years. Linus Allmark just signed the same AAV in Ottawa, which is interesting. I believe his was a 5-year deal, a 4-year deal.
4-year deal, yeah.
Right. So 4-year deal, 8.25. It's going to be interesting. That, we said it last week, 2 goalies who haven't really in the last couple of years played more than that 40-game, 45-game mark.
Because they always had those even splits.
Right. So they've had those even splits. 8.25 is, a lot of money. We're going to see the cap go up a little bit, but you're still talking about a fair amount of money when you're talking about $8.25 million, especially in the Swayman situation where now he's locked up for 8 years. And if you want to break it down, you can go to Puckpedia and you can break down what trade restrictions he has over those years. I believe it all kicks in year 3 of his deal. So that'll be a big thing for the Boston Bruins to see how he plays out the year. Obviously, he needs to get in game shape now, having held out for that little bit in training camp. That said, we got to talk about the league news before we get into our Maple Leafs.
Before we get into that, did you watch that Chicago-Utah game as well?
I saw clips of it. I didn't get to see a ton of it, but Dylan Guenther.
First goal in Utah history. The crowd was buzzing inside and out, man.
Did you see those little people crushing beers out of the shoes?
I may have missed.
I'll send in our little group chat on Slack there, but
that I may have missed. But
yeah,
I'm just gonna say buzzing. That the atmosphere right now, it's much better than a 5,000 college arena seat. I will say that. I mean,
absolutely.
They got the capacity right now. The venue looked a little bit different. Like I'm still thrown off by the dimensions of it, but when you saw Guenther score that goal, you saw everybody roar in that building. Like they want hockey there.
Absolutely. And it's worth noting that I believe they are still working on some of the dimensions because some of the seats, I guess, have like a little bit of blockage in terms of trying to see the seeing the defending net at times throughout the game. So they're still working on the logistics. I mean, we have to remember this all happens so fast, right?
In April, and they managed to turn it around right up until this point.
They turned it around quickly. They got jerseys out. They got the team introduced to the fans in the city. And, they got all the logistics figured out. So they're just kind of tying up some loose ends for Utah. But what a way to kick off the year! Utah wins. Yeah. Essentially crushing Connor Bedard and the Chicago Blackhawks, held them to one shot in the first period. Connor Bedard didn't have a single shot until like late in the second, and he finished with 5 and 2 points. So I mean, still not a terrible night for the sophomore, but definitely a big game for Utah. And I think we talked about this a little bit last pod, but we'll get into it more this week with the Western Division breakdown. The Arizona Coyotes, up until like their 11-game losing streak last season, were on the cusp of being a bubble team for the playoffs. Mm-hmm. The Utah, whatever you want to call them, the Utah HC.
Just call them Hockey Club.
Yeah.
That's apparently what it looks like when you see the stats. It just says Hockey Club.
That's it. So they could be on the verge of being a playoff team this year. You get that fresh mentality. You're out in a fresh new city. You've got the fan base to support you. It's going to be a tough barn to play in. That's the goal for them. And then you've got an owner who cares. He genuinely wants this team to succeed. And he's willing to put the money on the table to make it happen. So watch for Utah this season because they got some great talent there, and they've got a lot of young players that are up and coming. It's going to be an exciting club to watch. If you saw my latest piece or one of my latest pieces on the Hockey Writers, you'll know too that I mentioned if Marner does not sign mid-season, which we talked with David Alter about a couple episodes back, don't be surprised if Utah makes a stab at signing him in free agency if he makes it to free agency.
Throw a couple of bucks out there. Maybe the Maple Leafs could sign Igor Shesterkin.
Yeah.
Who knows? Perfect segue, basically, right now, right?
Perfect segue. Igor Shesterkin. This boggles my mind. Okay. It was reported that he turned down 8 years, $88 million, $11 million AAV. It would be the biggest goaltending contract in the history of the NHL. And Shesterkin's had some regular season success over the last few seasons. Playoff success has still kind of escaped him for the most part. How do you turn down $11 million per year, a record-breaking contract for goaltenders, when you haven't had the Stanley Cup to kind of back you? This kind of goes to the same conversation we've had before about players are betting on themselves and teams are forced to pay in advance for what they could get. Is this another case of that same idea?
I mean, initially when I heard that, I'm like, wow. Like I never heard somebody turn down $11 million before in my life. Like that to me, or 88 million over that span. Like that to me is just mind-boggling. And we're going to be at the point now where goalies, goalies are the backbone of the team at certain points, and Shesterkin has proved that time and time again. He was 5th in Calder voting in 2020-21. He was a top 3 Hart candidate in 21-22, won the Vezina that year. He's been a consistent Vezina performer every single time. Numbers seem to have dipped ever since that Vezina win, 916, 912. But at points during the playoffs, I agree that, again, great regular season success. Playoffs, maybe not so much, but there are certain points in the playoffs where the New York Rangers possibly could have gotten swept if it were for Igor Shesterkin. Like, even when you think that the offense has gone cold or, they can't buy a goal, Shesterkin is still keeping that team in there, doing what he can to win. And the mentality is, and I think Elliot Friedman mentioned it last night on one of the broadcasts, was, 11 million should have been enough, especially with one of the top two rich franchises in terms of revenue, like the New York Rangers. Initially, I thought that good luck finding that money anywhere else, because you're already going to be the highest paid goaltender in the league. Because when you look at the top contracts, it's Carey Price, he had 10.5, Bobrovsky right now 10, Vasilevsky 9.5, 8.5 for Hellebuck, and Sorokin and Swayman 8.25. We can even throw Olmark in there as well right now. All of those are the top goaltenders in the league right now, and Shesterkin should be a cut above the everyone else there. Freeman did allude to that he wants to be the highest paid player on the Rangers. And right now that's currently Artemi Panarin. And if he's looking to make $12 million as a goalie, I know this is kind of like that running back situation of football where you don't want to hand that money over to goaltenders because it is a slippery slope at times. But when you already have the body of work of Shesterkin right now at 28, you have to consider that, because if he signs 8 years, he's going to be going until he's 36. And that could be on the downturn trajectory of his career right then and there. And then you're going to have maybe a declining goaltender at 34, 35, 36 on the back tail of that deal, making $11 million. I think that's kind of a bit of a risk for the Rangers as well, because Shesterkin was a late bloomer. But right now, it's kind of hard to see him not being the top goaltender on that team or being the highest paid player on that team. But if you're looking at possibly getting that same money as Draisaitl, McDavid, Matthews, good luck, because teams are going to fork over the goals more so than anything at that point.
I got to ask the question. I mean, if you looked at it and he said, I'd be willing to go 5 years at 12 million, is that something that you'd consider, knowing that, you're getting him for a bit of a shorter term?
Yeah.
But, he still sees the money, or maybe even like 12.5. I would assume he'd probably ask for a little bit more, considering that the term would be much shorter. But, and after that deal, likely not going to, sign another big ticket, I would assume.
Yeah, that's usually the case, especially when you bring down the term of the contract. If he does sign maybe 5, even 6, that's probably the most that I would go. And it's still around that 11.75, 12 million range. You definitely have to consider that, because again, the New York Rangers will not be where they're at if Shesterkin is not on the team next season. Or if he goes elsewhere or somebody else is able to fork over that money. Because when you look at it right now, again, Panarin's making 11.6 and he's got 2 more years remaining on his deal. So is Panarin possibly going to take a bit of a cut so Shesterkin can be the highest paid player when his contract is up, or when the duration of his contract is still going on? That's something to consider as well, because 11.6 million for Panarin as one of the top wingers in the league. Obviously, that's a no-brainer right there. He's proved it time and time again that he's a dynamic player. Shesterkin, again, he's done it early on in his career. He may have to, force the Rangers' hand and give him what he wants if it's a shorter amount of term. If the Rangers don't want to go 8 years, maybe the 12.5 is something that they may be willing to do. But if he rejected 11 million, how far are the Rangers going to go up in terms of giving that salary to a goaltender? That's going to be the big question.
Yeah, I think the other thing to consider too is, like, I mean, we're having the same conversation with Mitch Marner, and don't get me wrong, Shesterkin's had success in the playoffs. We've seen that. That being said, normally historically, when a player has earned a Stanley Cup or been on a Stanley Cup winning team, has the ring, that kind of gives you that little bit of a edge
Leeway.
when you're in negotiations.
Yeah.
You can ask for that extra million or what have you. Regardless of the success that he's had, Shesterkin isn't a Stanley Cup winner at this point. He hasn't got them over the edge.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, again, I don't want to take anything away from Shesterkin because just looking at his numbers, I mean, even in one of his, so he's had 2 seasons where in the playoffs he's had 10 wins, one where he had 7 and his goals against was 196. So the fact is, like, he's been there, he's backstopped this team when maybe they weren't playing their best. That said, goaltending in the playoffs, sometimes you need them to steal 2 or 3 games to get you over the hump, and it doesn't seem like they've gotten they haven't gotten the performance when they need it the most.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
They've gotten his performance, but the team outside of him really hasn't stepped up.
Yeah, exactly it. So I don't know. I think it'll be interesting negotiations, but definitely going to be a topic that we're going to probably cover all season long as the negotiations continue. But yeah, anyways, outside of that, I want to get into our Leafs really because it's game day and we know the listeners want to listen to the Leafs, so that's what they want to talk about. Before we get into all that though, I do want to break down the Western Conference because games have kicked off. We owe it to the Western Conference listeners if we have any to talk about the Western Conference and their teams respectively. So with that, let's kind of break it down a little bit here with we'll start off in the Central. The Central's had a few games already. Obviously the Blues have played, the Blackhawks have played. Utah's kicked off their year with a win. So with that, let's start it off with the Blackhawks, the lowly Blackhawks, the Connor Bedard special. What are you seeing from the Chicago Blackhawks this season?
Still another year of pain. I mean, I think when again you want to try and surround Bedard with a good amount of vets. They brought in some decent players to try and maybe win a few more games this time around, but this is just going to be a stepping point in the season or in the new rebuild where they just want to take baby steps going forward. They're nowhere near to competing just yet. Some of their best players or some of their top prospects are still in the system coming up, about to be call-ups. I do think that there is potential down the line, just not this season. I don't think there's enough offensively to try and get things done. And we saw it yesterday where maybe the offense wasn't clicking as much. Then again, it's still early on. Teams are still trying to find combinations and everything like that. You do have a healthy Taylor Hall right now. Hopefully he could be a difference maker. You brought in Tyler Bertuzzi, see what Ilya Mikheyev can do. Can Philip Kurashev take a big step forward because he and Bedard look like to have some good chemistry. And in goal, again, I'm still not sold on Peter Mrazek. I think that first goal on Genther was one that just went by him. Again, we know the Peter Mrazek experience. Don't think they're going to be competing anytime soon. But then again, look out for Drew Comesso coming up. He's their top goaltender for the future at the moment. But yeah, just another year of developing and taking everything step by step with the Blackhawks this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Alec Martinez was added. TJ Brody was added.
Underrated move.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, you got guys like Ryan Donato's in there now, Nick Foligno, Patrick Maroon, Ilya Mikheyev, you mentioned, Tyler Bertuzzi. Again, a lot of great adds to kind of build around the team that you have, but outside of Connor Bedard, like, this team is actually on the older end of things. A lot of your young guys haven't made that jump yet. You will see Frank Nazar. You will see Oliver Moore. You will see Lucas Reichel really take that next step over the next little bit. Obviously, they've got other guys like Sasha Boisvert and Colton Dach as well. So there's a lot of excitement to come with this team. I agree with you 1,000%. It's not now. It's the time's just not now. So, yeah, I don't know. I do think they're going to finish near the bottom again. I wouldn't be surprised to see them get another top 3 pick. And I think this is part of the rebuild, and they got to go through it. And during that time, they're going to watch Bedard kind of just get to that next level and reach his NHL prime rather than his junior prime. I'll be honest with you, I've got him for 40 goals this year. I took that as a future bet, and I can certainly see it happening. So, jumping away from them, the Winnipeg Jets, and I mentioned to you, I think a couple weeks ago, that this is a team that I did take a waiver on. I've got a future on them to win the cup. Do I think they're going to be the favorite? Absolutely not. I think Hellebuck's a top 5 goalie in this league. You've got some pieces there that, given the opportunity to take the next step, I think can really, really do some damage. Gabe Vilardi, he had a kind of injury-ridden season last year. Nick Ehlers, I think he's still got another level. Cole Perfetti's another guy. They've added Nemesnikov. They've got Morgan Barron, Alex Iafallo. They've got a lot of opportunity there. And this doesn't even include guys like Chaz Lucius, Brad Lambert, Nikita Chibrikov, Colby Barlow, all guys that they will be adding down the road. Braden Yeager as well. Yeah, sorry. And then on the back end, obviously, Colin Miller's a big add for them. And I think they're pretty set on the back end. And I'm actually excited about the goaltending they have. Hellebuck, and then I think their backup Kaapo Kähkönen is quite an underrated piece to their puzzle as well. So really, it's going to be their depth up front, but this team could certainly be a top 3 pick or in the Central Division.
Oh, absolutely. I think the Jet. I mean, I'm just going to say it right now. If your top 3 doesn't include the Dallas Stars, Colorado Avalanche, Winnipeg Jets, not saying something is wrong with you, but you have to. Those teams are basically the top 3 of every single year, and I think they're going to be at the top of that right now. You could have some surprises sprinkled in there. Who knows what the Minnesota Wild can do, or even the Nashville Predators? Because I mean, when you add Jonathan Marchessault and Steven Stamkos, you're looking to make a big time push offensively right now. So it's going to be a competitive division to the point where it could match that of the Atlantic, where you're going to have a lot of teams and a lot of competition right now. But sticking with the Jets, the big thing for me is they always start off hot. Like the first 2-3 months, everyone's raving about the Jets and how great they are. Kyle Connor's firing on all cylinders. Mark Scheifele's firing on all cylinders. Like you mentioned, Gabe Vilardi, hopefully he could take a big step forward because he was a really good addition last year before injuries. So he started to battle that bug again. The big thing is what's going to happen in the second half, because that's usually when the team cools off. Everything goes cold. And, one player that I'm looking at specifically is how big of a step can Nick Ehlers get back into form, where he was a dynamic 60, 70 point threat every single season before the struggles started to kick in. And I believe even he was dealing with some injuries as well. So Ehlers is going to be big for me. Can playoff Hellebuck not be as egregious and, detrimental to the team as he has been in the past? Because we talk about goalie performances in the playoffs. Connor Hellebuck has really struggled in the past. So if both Ehlers can provide some really good, strong secondary scoring behind Connor, Scheifele, Vilardi even at this point, and Hellebuck can find some consistency in the playoffs, this team does have the potential to go. But until I see that happen, they're still going to be middle of the pack, first round playoff team, but maybe not so much after that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with you on that. I think it's another. It's very much the Toronto mentality where it's like, let's get to the first round and see what happens, right? Nashville Predators, you mentioned them off the top there. They're going to be another interesting team. They've added some pieces, most notably Steven Stamkos. They did lose Yaroslav Askarov, which, quick side note, I think it's hilarious that he wanted out of Nashville because he didn't feel like he'd be playing, and now he's been sent down to the AHL by San Jose. But that said, UC Saros is back on a fresh new contract. Romy Josi is arguably one of the best defensemen in the league, if not the best. No shot at Cale Makar or Quinn Hughes. You've got Brady Shea. You've got Dante Fabro. You've got Jeremy Lazon. You've got you go to their forwards. You've got Philip Tomasino. You've got Luke Evangelista, who should take another step this year. And then, of course, Tommy Novak, who I think is an underrated player. And then the additions of Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault, both Stanley Cup winners. They've got pedigree. They've got veteran leadership. This team could be a very interesting pick this year.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. And again, you mentioned guys that could take a big step: Luke Evangelista, Tommy Novak. I think the Brady Shea edition can be a very underrated move. I mean, given his body of work of what he's done with Carolina in the past, can provide a little bit more offense on the back end where you're not just relying on Roman Josi most of the time. Again, we both alluded to Stamkos and Marchessault. Philip Forsberg, again, just another force, but I think the big, not necessarily wild card here, but I'm interested to see what he can do. I was a big fan of Tanner Molendyk in his draft year, and it looks like he's on the roster currently at the moment. So if he's able to get some game time in, be a consistent or very make the most of his opportunity every single time that he comes in, I think it's going to be good for him, his development, and for the team as well, where they have one of their top prospects already make the jump into the system, especially with the dynamic two-way play that he can bring.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think I've got Nashville in that potential top 3 for me as well. Jumping to the Minnesota Wild, another interesting team, a lot of young talent. Still, they've got that veteran goalie with Marc-Andre Fleury. I haven't decided who I think their starter is going to be because there's a lot of questions around Philip Gustafsson. After last season, he didn't really perform to what they expected. Marc-Andre Fleury obviously is approaching 40 very quickly. But then they've also got Jesper Wallstedt, who they signed to a 2-year contract extension. Outside of that, you've got Matt Boldy, you've got Marco Rossi, who should take the next steps in their development. You've got Yakov Trenin, who you added. Depth up front seems to be, not really an issue for them. Obviously, they've got guys coming up as well. Liam Ogren, Riley Heidt. There's potential to see some of that as well. On the back end, Brock Faber's looking for a big sophomore year, the 22-year-old. He could have easily been named Calder any other season if he wasn't going up against Bedard. But their bottom pairing is kind of a question mark for them. Goaltending could be a question mark. Where do you see the Minnesota Wild?
Yeah, I think it does all come down to goaltending and the depth defense that they have. And I mentioned this on Prospect Corner, the other show that I do on the Hockey Writers, where, we've raved about Faber, how he possibly could have been a Calder Trophy winner. We've kind of seen in the past where if you don't eclipse that 50 point mark, that could be a reason why maybe you don't win it. But he was just 3 points shy. I mean, he was just like, a top 3 candidate regardless. If he probably would have hit 50 points, he probably could have won it and surpassed Connor Bedard as a result of that. But I digress. I do think that there's going to probably be no sophomore slump with Faber. I think he's one of those players that will rise to the challenge. Hometown kid. You see him in his college days cheering for Kirill Kaprizov, scoring a goal, and now he's on the same team as him right now. So it's great to see that, short-term fandom that Faber had for the Wild translating to that right now, where he's going to be a big factor for that team going forward. And yeah, there's a carousel right now going in net for the Wild with Gustafsson, Fleury, and Wallstedt. It's like, who are you going to rely on mostly right now? Because Wallstedt is definitely going to be the guy for the future. You signed him to 2 years. I think at one point right now, you're probably going to fill up Gustafsson where maybe he's going to be on the clock, or not necessarily on the clock, but being that goaltender where if you don't play well or give us some average goaltending where he had 306 goals against average and 899 save percentage, if it's slightly at that same range right now, he's going to be sent down, and Wallstedt is going to be sharing duties with Fleury. So I think that's going to be key right there. If you're going to have Fleury Wallstedt lead the tandem, great. Because I know Wallstedt looked really good in the AHL. Fleury's on the downturn of his career. He's retiring at the end of the season, I believe. So it's going to be Wallstedt's crease in the future. So might as well get him in right now while you still can.
Yeah, absolutely. Dallas Stars. This is easily one of my favorites coming out of the West. Listen to these top 3 lines. Robertson, Hintz, Wyatt Johnston, who's going to take the next step in his development. He's 21 years old. Guy had 32 goals and 65 points last year. Jamie Benn, Matt Duchene, Logan Stankoven. Stankoven's a big name for me. Mason Marchment, Maverick Bork, and Tyler Seguin on your third line. Forget the fourth line. You could run with 3 lines and this team would be unbelievable.
Yeah.
On the back end, Miro Heiskanen, Ilya Lyubushkin, Thomas Harley, Matthew Dumba, your top 4. Esa Lindell, Niles Lundqvist on your bottom pairing. And that doesn't even include Jake Ottinger and Casey DeSmith as your goaltenders. If this team doesn't win, I'm going to be like, I'll be shocked. They'll have to suffer so many injuries. I mean, I'd be stupid not to put a future on them to win the cup. I think I'd be stupid not to do it. I think this team's just been waiting its turn to kind of make that run and make it in a big way. And I don't see a hole in their lineup.
Yeah, no, they fell just short of that mark of making it to the Stanley Cup final when they just lost to the Edmonton Oilers. And I think aside from the Oilers in the West, your best next bet is definitely going to be the Dallas Stars. And looking at their lineup, like you mentioned, like that top 9 right there, that is as balanced as it's going to get offensively right there. Where you have some of your younger players coming up. Stankoven, he's still eligible for the Calder Trophy race because he only played 1 game less than he should have last year. So maybe that's just 20. He was at 24. If he hit that 25 game mark, he would not be eligible. So for him to still be in it, Maverick Bork, I'm looking to see. I mean, I do think Wyatt Johnston is going to have a massive breakout year. I'm thinking that this guy is going to, see the surge that we saw with Jason Robertson, where he's going to be an 80-point producer, more so than what we saw last season.
40-goal scorer, yeah.
Yeah, and from what I saw in the preseason in some of these games, his shot looks absolutely lethal. So I wouldn't be surprised if he takes a big step. Even Thomas Harley too. I really liked what he was able to do, make that transition from previously in and get that opportunity, get that ice time, get those minutes up, and be a very steady puck-moving defender on the back end. I mean, we talk about how Miro Heiskanen is a very solid two-way player. Harley has that more of that puck-moving element to his game. Again, I'm not saying that Heiskanen doesn't, but he excels on the defensive side of the puck a little bit better. But Harley, if he's able to produce a little bit more, get those points up, and not so much rely on Heiskanen being the setup man on the back end, I think you have a really solid lineup on that left side with Heiskanen and Harley leading the charge for the Stars defense. Yeah,
no, absolutely. Like I said, this team's got to be my favorite coming out of the Central. I think we'd be nuts not to think that they've got a real chance to take it all the way. The Central looks a little weaker this year, so I think that's certainly a question mark when it comes to the Dallas Stars. But if they can get it done, I don't see why they won't. But
yeah.
Another team coming out of the Central that, you can't really sleep on is obviously the Colorado Avalanche. There's a chance we see Landeskog back this season, which is going to be a huge bonus for this team. This is a team that, did everything they did last season without their leader. Not to say that Nathan McKinnon can't step into that role, of course, but, Landeskog had the C for a reason. What are your thoughts on the Colorado Avalanche?
Yeah, so just to go back to one quick point about Thomas Harley, he had 47 points last year. So expect him to take a big step this year again, kind of like what we're going to see with Wyatt Johnston on the back end. But yeah, 47 points, second most productive behind Heiskanen. That's what you want to see. Now I digress. Going back to Colorado, the signs that Gabriel Landeskog could come back this season is really promising, especially early on in the season. If he's coming back within the next 2-3 months, I think that's a big boost for Colorado. It's maybe a little bit of an adjustment period considering how Landeskog hasn't played a lot of meaningful games over the past few seasons. But with the work that he's doing off the ice, you can rest assured that he's going to come back bigger, stronger, and better than ever before. So I think that, and this is, I took a flyer on him. I selected him on my fantasy draft, put him on LTIR until he comes back. So fingers crossed that actually happens, but hopefully that his health is more important. I think that's the one thing that we all wish for, that he comes back healthy, because he's a premier power forward excels on both sides of the game. And you know what? You could go back to that top line of Landeskog, McKinnon, Rantanen. I mean, that is just absolutely lethal. You talk about like trios of forwards. That has been one of the most productive ones in the past leading up to Colorado Stanley Cup win. So if he's able to come back, that's fantastic. I'm really hoping that he could find that edge, that game that he brings every single time that he's on the ice with that intensity, the leadership on and off the ice, because Colorado really needs that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I thought you had one more point to make, but
no.
I think my biggest question marks on this team are health. Obviously, we don't really know what's going on with Valeri Nichushkin. He's been a big part of this team over the last couple of years. We don't know when Lekkonen's going to be back. We don't know when Landeskog's going to be back. Casey Middlestad, I think, is going to have to be a big role player this season. He's got a great opportunity in Colorado now. And then the other question mark I have is Oliver Shillington. I think he's a solid addition, and I'm curious to see what he can add on the back end. Outside of that, I don't have a lot of trust in Georgiev. I don't see
he's
him
very
as,
hit or miss. Yeah,
he's very hit or miss. And your backup right now is Justice Annunen, and I'm just not confident. So this team's really gonna have to pull together as a unit and try and defend that. Outside of that, I mean, are they a playoff team? I don't see why they can't be a playoff team in the Central. I just think they're going to be fighting for that bubble spot just with all the injuries and question marks they have throughout their lineup. Down to the last couple here, but the St. Louis Blues already have one win under their belt. They looked fairly good, shut it down 3-2. Binnington obviously being the guy in net. Big note is guys like Robert Thomas stepping up, Jordan Kyrou off the hop stepping up with a couple goals. So this team is going to be kind of what we've seen over the last little bit. I posted on Twitter after the one goal because it was scored by Philip Broberg, and then it was assisted by Dylan Holloway. Obviously, the two guys that were offer sheeted by the St. Louis Blues from the Edmonton Oilers. So it was just kind of a funny thing for me to see that happen. I thought it was, it just kind of fit well. But looking at this lineup, similar to how it's played out over the last few years, Jake Neighbors is going to have a big role this year. Alexander Texier is going to be in there. Matthew Joseph's a guy that's in there. Alexei Toropchenko, they got signed. He's going to be a big part of that. Radek Faksa, another guy that's going to be a big part of that. Your back end hasn't changed too much. They've obviously added a veteran in Ryan Suter. And then in net, obviously, Jordan Binnington is ahead of Joel Hofer. But this team is going to be kind of that bubble team fighting for something, I think, at the end of the year. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, definitely a bubble team. Definitely going to be on the outside looking in, considering how well other teams have added in this offseason. But like you mentioned, the additions of Broberg and Holloway already paying dividends for the St. Louis Blues, and that's what you want, right? Those are two players that were further down the depth chart on the Oilers roster. Now they're getting more opportunities right now, and I think Broberg is going to be a fantastic addition on that back end, especially where you need to kind of find the offense that was lost with Torrey Krug, because he's going to be missing the entire season right now. That to me is a big loss, but having the likes of Philip Broberg on the back end, because I believe Krug is a left-hand shot. I'm going to verify that there. Yes, he is a left-hand shot. And if Broberg is also a left-hand shot, that it just kind of fills the offensive void of him being a dynamic two-way defender with the offensive skill that he could bring. And yeah, he is a left-hand shot. So if he's going to get those minutes, he's going to be a big X factor for not just the St. Louis Blues defense, but for the team as well, where he hasn't really gained those opportunities with the Oilers. I thought maybe that playoff probably would have solidified his spot on the Oilers blue line, because they seem to have taken a hit, and they could have used him a little bit more so now than ever before. But yeah, I think he's poised for a big season. I'm looking at Jake Neighbors to try and replicate the 27 goals that he had last season as well. Very impressive overall. Thomas Kyrou definitely leading the charge as well. Pavel Buchnevich. as another guy that you're looking to lead the offense as well. Hopefully Braden Shen can have a bounce back as well. Maybe he could be a little bit more productive, but yeah, Blues are definitely going to be still in a fight for a playoff spot right now, considering how much competition there is right now. And now I'm just going to throw in the Utah Hockey Club in there right now. You got them breathing down, their backs right now. So, it's going to be a different situation, a different battle, knowing how if Utah played like they did against Chicago, they're going to be in tight as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Utah. We'll go through it real quick. But Clayton Keller, Nick Schmaltz, Lawson Krause, Logan Cooley, Dylan Genther on a new contract, Barrett Hayton, Josh Doan. This team's going to be exciting. I said it from the get-go. Mikhail Sergachev was a big ad. Sean Dursey's another ad. This team is going to be interesting to watch this year. I think, forget being a bubble team, I truly think the Utah Hockey Club pushed for a playoff spot this year. Connor Ingram coming off a big year. Karel Vejmelka, also another guy that kind of he's going to be an interesting asset as well. That doesn't even include guys like Tidge Aginla, who will be coming up in the next couple of years. And that leaves Alex Kerfoot on the outside looking in. So it's going to be an interesting year for the Utah Hockey Club. Very exciting to see what Utah brings to the league. Before we jump into the Metro Division here, actually, before we do that, give me your top three out of the Central if you got them.
Yeah, I kind of mentioned it at the top. It's going to be Dallas 1, Colorado 2, Winnipeg 3. I think those are the main three that you're looking at right there to be at the top of the division.
Okay. I got Dallas 1. I got the Predators 2, and I'm going to put Utah 3.
Ooh.
I'm going to put Utah 3. I got Dallas, Nashville, and Utah.
Throwing a curveball there.
Yeah. So, although I took the Jets as a future for the Cup, I think they climbed themselves in on a wild card spot, and it's they'll make some noise once they get to the playoffs. But regular season, I think it's going to be an interesting race. Yeah. So before we get to the the Pacific Division, just a quick note from our friends over at DraftKings Sportsbook. The quest for the Stanley Cup starts now. The puck's dropping on the 24-25 season. Get in on all the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. It's super easy for the first timers to get started. Try betting on something simple like picking a team to win. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app, select your team, and place your bet. I mentioned it off the top. I've got a futures on the Winnipeg Jets to win the Cup. I've got a futures on on Connor McDavid to get 40 goals. I also have a sneaky little futures on Elias Lindholm to get 80 points in Boston. So you can take some of those futures as well as picking goal scorers, as well as picking winners, as well as parlaying all of that together. And if you are new to DraftKings, listen up. New customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ice. Copyright NHL 2024. All rights reserved. Well, the Pacific we're going to run through very quickly here. This is going to be a very tight division this year. Let's start with Western Canada. You got the Canucks, you got the Oilers, you got the Flames. What are you seeing out of Western Canada this year?
I mean, all eyes are going to be on the Oilers, just one game away from winning the Stanley Cup. I think they're going to be... Sorry?
I said, wah.
Oh, I kind of like flew over my head there. I thought I heard that I didn't know what was going on there, but yeah, a little womp situation because they were just one game away. again, you even heard like McDavid talk about like in one of the scrums, just be like, you know what? Forget the past, forget the playoffs. It's a new season. Let's just go on with it. Forget what happened even during the, inside the NHL doc. This is a new season. Draisaitl's extended. McDavid is in it for the long run. Everyone is in it as well. I think you're looking at Edmonton winning the division right there, followed by Vancouver. It's going to be really tough, especially if Thatcher Demko is going to be out for an extended period of time, because he's been your backbone in net the whole entire time. And if he's going to be out with another major injury, that's a damper, or that's a blow to them, because he's an important piece. So I would still have Vancouver in the third spot as well as, or the second spot. As for the Calgary Flames, again, kind of like that transitional period where it's not a full rebuild. It's more of like a retooling kind of thing. And we know how hit or miss that can be. But, I'm interested to see what Dustin Wolf is going to bring in, being sort of that backup, but try to push for that starter role as well, because he's been fantastic in the AHL. You still got a lot of your players intact from last season. You're looking to see some players make the jump as well. Looking at Matthew Coronado's direction, hopefully he can make the jump. Not for certain if he's actually made the roster. I would hope that he did. Yes, he did. Started most likely probably going to start the season off, but also Samuel Honzak, of what he's going to do. One of those like more underrated prospects that just flew under the radar at camp and made the team. So if he did something well to impress the Flames, he earned a spot on the roster right there. I think they may be middle of the pack of the Pacific, maybe fifth, maybe sixth. But that's just probably as high I'll rank the Flames at this point.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why in fantasy hockey I went after Connor McDavid. The guy's a two-player replacement, essentially, in any fantasy league. And, I mean, on top of that, I think it's a no-doubter that the Edmonton Oilers are going to be atop the Pacific once again. The Vancouver Canucks, yes, I know Demko's out. I think you're going to have to correct me on the pronunciation of his name. Silovs?
Yeah, Silovs.
Yeah. I think he's super underrated. Let's not forget that he helped Latvia to a medal in the World Championships just a couple years ago. So he's a guy that, comes in super underrated. The Calgary Flames are not there yet. There was a lot of talk in the offseason that, Nazem Kadri, there was one team that he was willing to go to. I think we all know what team that was. Outside of that, Kuzmenko is going to get a full year for the first time with the Calgary Flames. You've got Huberdeau, who really hasn't lived up to the expectations since coming over. Connor Zary should take the next step. Sharon Govich should be a big piece, but Anthony Mantha, Matt Coronado, there's a lot of depth here. I'm not sold on the back end. I'm not sold on the goaltending now with Dan Vladar and Dustin Wolf as your duo. Look for Wolf to take the helm on that, but yeah, I think Calgary's going to be they're going to be a lottery pick again this year. I'm not sold on the Calgary Flames this season. Outside of that, you've got the Ducks, you've got the Kings, you've got San Jose down south, and then of course you've got the Golden Knights and the Kraken. What do you see in these last 5 teams in the Pacific, and then what are your top 3 from the Pacific going into the playoffs?
Yeah, I think when you look at teams like Anaheim and San Jose, they're probably going to be closer towards the bottom. Again, transitional period for them with their top prospects coming up. I think it's going to be a battle to see who has the better of the two systems when it comes down to the Sharks and Ducks. Obviously, Celebrini's making the jump. Will Smith is making the jump, but the Ducks have, their young core, a lot of them intact. You're going to get a full season, possibly of Leo Carlson, Tristan Luneau on the back end, Olin Zellweger as well. I've been a big fan of his for quite some time. So I think those two teams, you're probably looking at 7th or 8th, interchangeable, depending on how everything plays out. LA Kings is going to be a wild card because Drew Doughty out for month to month. It's going to be a big blow to them. Really not sold on Darcy Kemper as their starter at this point because didn't really have as much faith in him with the Washington Capitals last season, and he gets swapped over with Pierre-Luc Dubois for a change of scenery. Don't see how that's really going to help them in the crease. So that's going to be a big question mark as well. And also, can you get a lot of replication from last season? Kevin Fiala had a big year. Same with Adrian Kempe. Trevor Moore, can you get another 30 goals or so out of him? That's going to be important to see. I think that they will probably be middle of the pack. I think they may fall into that 5th range. As for the Golden Knights and Kraken, I mean, Golden Knights are still a top-tier team. No matter how you look at that, even with some of their departures, they still manage to fill the voids offensively and defensively. I think the Golden Knights are going to be in 3rd, and I think the Kraken possibly could be interchangeable with the LA Kings, where they could rotate back and forth between 4th or 5th. But yeah, it's going to be a little bit more competitive in that middle part of the Pacific, more so than the top or bottom. But if we're going like my top 8 right now in order, I'm going Edmonton 1, Vancouver 2, Vegas 3. I'm going to give the slight advantage to the Kings offense. Put them in 4th, Seattle 5, Calgary 6, and then interchange between Anaheim and San Jose at the bottom, because I think it could go either way for both of those franchises.
Yeah, no, I'll start off with obviously Edmonton. Obviously, Anaheim and San Jose will be at the bottom. I think San Jose is going to be a very exciting team to watch this season. So don't not catch.
Don't knock them off.
Yeah, because it's going to be a lot of excitement. Celebrini had a great preseason. Obviously, Will Smith's another player that's coming up, and I'm excited to watch him. I've got him on my fantasy minors. I've had him for like 2 years now. So I wouldn't mind watching him come up as well. I do think the Kings are going to be interesting. They've got Fiala, they've got Kempe, they've got Kopitar, Quentin Byfield, still looking for him to take that next step. Kaliev, again, another guy that he's got a lethal shot, but we're still waiting to see what he can do. Tanner Jeannot was a big ad for them. And then, of course, they've got Joel Edmondson on the back. Brant Clark should take that next step. Biggest thing for them is Drew Doughty being injured for the length of time that he will. And then in net, you've got Darcy Kemper. You got David Rittich. Phoenix Copley, I'd like to see come back up. I think there's still a lot of questions around. I thought he would be a big player for them down the stretch. But, yeah, they're kind of a bubble team for me. In terms of the Vegas Golden Knights, maybe the best defense in the entire NHL, and that's with Nick Hague not in their top 6.
Yeah,
it's mind blowing. You've got, I honestly think that Ilya Samsonov is going to have an outstanding year behind Adin Hill with this core 6 playing in front of them. The biggest thing for them, and I'll throw a little bold prediction out for you. I think Mark Stone gets injured about 10 games out from the playoffs, and they go out and make a big
long-term
deal
injury reserve, circumvent the cap kind of thing.
Yeah. So, I honestly think Vegas got away with one. I don't know all the issues that are going on behind the scenes with their former contract in net there. I don't know why it's escaping me. Who's their goalie?
Oh, Robin Lehner.
Robin Lehner, thank you. I don't know why it was escaping me.
Yes, he wasn't reporting for the physicals and everything like that.
Right. So for me, like I don't know. I'm feeling like they got kind of let off the hook a little bit with that one.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyways, regardless, they have a way of circumventing the cap, regardless of how they do it, whether it's the league helping them out. Regardless, it's going to be Vegas is going to be up there. I agree with you. I think it goes Edmonton number 1. I think Vancouver's number 2, and then I think Seattle might intrigue a lot of people. I think Seattle's going to be an interesting pick. I think they could finish 3rd in the division, and the Golden Knights might be that second wild card team with the Winnipeg Jets. But worth noting, since we're on the subject, big shout out to Saskatchewan's Jessica Campbell, who became the first female assistant coach in the NHL history. I don't know if you saw it. It's on Instagram right now. There's a little shot of her drawing up plays late in the 3rd period. What a huge step in the right direction to get women involved in all facets of the game. And I think you know, it's she's going to prove to everybody that, you know, there's a place for women in the men's game, and that they, you know, coaching, it doesn't come down to who you are and what you do. Coaching comes down to how you coach the game, how you read the game, how you see the game. And I think we're gonna have the pleasure of watching this unfold over the next 82 games this season. Okay,
and I think that also
Sorry.
speaks to Dan Bilesma as well, with
Absolutely.
the working relationship that he's had with Campbell, working all this time, I believe, with Coachella Valley for the past few seasons, and then being named head coach and then bringing her on to his coaching staff because of that relationship that they have, the success that they've had in the AHL. You know, you want to bring in someone familiar that you know, and then Campbell is definitely that name that really just stuck out because, you know, like you mentioned, there's that scene where she's drawing plays up on the clipboard. You see the intensity that she has on the bench. It's just absolutely phenomenal to see right now. So yeah, big congrats to her. And again, Seattle's got a really great one on their hand with Campbell.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. And I'm gonna say this. I got this like big push for like bold predictions this year. I mentioned it off the top, or I mentioned it on Twitter, I think last week after our last episode. Anyways, I said I don't think Ovechkin's going to break Gretzky's record this year. I'm questionable whether he hits 30 goals or not. But that's not the one I'm talking about. I want to talk about our predictions last week on the Eastern Conference, and where we had the New York Rangers. I think Shesterkin turning down $11 million and saying he wants to be paid more than anybody else on the team.
That may factor their
fuck
position
with that team. I think it's going to completely fuck with that team.
That's a bold prediction there. Yeah.
We talked about the effect that Swayman's contract was going to have on the Boston Bruins culture.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me right now that Shesterkin and you know, let's say he doesn't get what he wants. There's quite possibly the possibility that maybe he has an injury, that he sits out a few games. It's going to mess with that team. Yeah. I don't think there's any question about it. I would see the New York Rangers maybe dropping a couple positions in the East.
Interesting.
Just my thought. Yeah. Just my thought.
It's interesting that you bring that up because they do have Jonathan Quick to rely on, and he's still looking pretty good at his age. So he's still got it. So yeah, they do have a good fallback option, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this negotiation affects their positioning in the standing right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's gonna be fun to watch. I mean, there's so many storylines in the first week of the season. Yeah. Anyways, before we get to our Maple Leafs, and obviously they hit the ice tonight against the rival Montreal Canadiens, we welcome Gametime to the Hockey Podcast Network family. If you're looking for tickets, if you're looking to be in the seat, feeling the cool air and the chill of watching your favorite players, watching your favorite teams, hell, watching a comedy show. You could boo the guys off stage in Toronto, like we just saw at Scotiabank Arena. One of the comedians that opened up for, I forget who it was, but opened up the show at Scotiabank Arena. Why not check out Gametime? You can jump on the app now. You can find last minute seats to any game you want for below market value sometimes as well. Use the app features listed. You've got insurance on your ticket purchases, 24-hour return guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss assurance. You've got all kinds of protection on these tickets as well. So make sure you check out Gametime. Priority Gametime picks curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. Toggling this feature shows the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout, like you can see with Ticketmaster sometimes. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. So as we just talked about, in Utah, you might see that there's a little bit of blockage on your seat. You might not buy those tickets. The lowest price guaranteed, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Gametime ticket coverage, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork right out of buying tickets with Gametime picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code THPN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code THPN for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. Well, it is game time for our Toronto Maple Leafs. They're going to be kicking off their season
down the minutes and
on.
hours.
Yeah, we're counting down the hours now. Puck drop. We've talked about the last couple weeks since they played in the preseason. Arbor Jacki, Ryan Reeves, Patrick Laine. This is going to be a heated affair to start the year. I had this image when I was driving my kid to school today that, man, Jacki is going to go right after Matthews. I just had it in my head. It's going to be a physical affair. I can't see why Ryan Reeves wouldn't be in there. You got Steven Lorentz. He's recently signed to a contract. You got Max Pacioretty, recently signed to a contract. This is going to be one hell of a season opener. I just posted a story to the Hockey Writers about Austin Matthews' history in season openers. Over 8 seasons, he's missed just one season opener. He's been held pointless just once outside of missing that game. So 6 times he's had points in a season opener. Only 1 time was he held to 1 point in those 6 times. 5 times he's had multi-point season openers. That includes 12 goals and 15 points over those 7 games.
And 2 hat tricks.
2 hat tricks, which is pretty crazy to think about. If he can get it done, he's wearing the C now. He's the leader. He's going to lead by example. We've seen him in the preseason. He looked good. Peter, what are you looking for in the season opener? Toronto, Montreal, tonight at 7:00.
Well, if I'm Craig Berube and we know how much of a tough customer he was playing, I would instantly put the 4th line out against any line that Jacki is going to be on. Because if anything dumb happens, because Jacki has had revenge on his mind since the Toronto game, since the Ottawa game, because there was that issue with Ridley Gregg catching Kirby Dach up high. Mm-hmm. There was the elbow towards Tim Stützle, the chicken wing. We talked about how much of a loose cannon he can be at times, that he's got to tone it down. You want to send that message and be like, to Ryan Reeves, just patrol everything what's going on right now, because we know what happened. We know how he just mercilessly, repeatedly punched Perret. And Patrick Laine has come out and said, he probably put himself in a bad spot, so it kind of cleared the air right there. Hopefully that calms the tensions down, but you don't know what's going to happen. So that, for me, I just want to see Revo patrol everything right now, make sure nothing gets out of hand, because there were instances where he did that during the preseason. Hopefully he can continue that right now. What I wanted to see from the Maple Leafs, basically the same type of thing that we saw in the preseason games. Be smart, have the attention to detail, come back on the back check, mitigate those rest chances, because those were always an issue last season. And the Maple Leafs fared much better this time around. And there were times where their best players weren't playing against the other team's best players, and there was all the players competing for a roster spot, and they took note of that. So let's hope that the Maple Leaf Stars also have that mentality, have that 200-foot game, north-south, as Craig Berube wants to reiterate nonstop. Go hard north, come back hard south, and, protect the net, protect the middle of the ice. Do what you can to do to win. Penalty kill. I love the intensity that Lane Lambert is showing on the bench, where he's looking out on the ice and it's like he's involved in the actual play, and the Maple Leafs are executing perfectly. I want to see the unpredictability of the new power play, where it seems like they're starting to get their mojo going. They're starting to get that offense, that creativity, the passing plays going. And they're not just relying on certain set of plays and on the entry. I want to see them get out of their comfort zone. This is the season where it's a new voice, a new outlook, a new mentality, and I want to see that every step of the way from game 1. We saw it at points during the preseason, fantastic, but now everything resets. Everything's back at 0. You want them to take that big step. I mean, they made the necessary adjustments on defense. They added some good forward depth up front. I really think that Steven Lorentz is going to be a big factor on that 4th line. Now, when players start to get healthy, you're going to have to start making some changes. You're going to have to make some moves. You're going to have to make some trades at some point. But as of right now, this roster is very competitive. It seemed like Matthews wants to take the next step. Nylander, Marner looked a little bit more energetic during preseason at times. I know there's going to be a lot of talk about him from regular season to playoffs, but from top to bottom, this Maple Leaf team, the depth and the commitment to playing a strong overall 200-foot game is there, and I think that was lacking previously. They don't want to lose that run and gun offense or puck possession style that makes them successful, but they want to be a more well-rounded team, and I think we're going to see that.
You talked about the passion that exists in this Maple Leafs lineup now and hopefully can carry into the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
The Leafs signed Pacioretty to a one-year deal. They signed Steven Lorentz to a one-year deal. And here's what Steven Lorentz had to say via Mark Masters on X in terms of the game today. It's game day, baby. It's a new season. Very exciting, especially to be wearing these colors.
Yeah.
On top of that, you've got Simon Benoit, who's playing his first ever season opener.
Yeah, season opener.
In Montreal, at home.
Mm-hmm.
He basically said, tonight I'm playing for free. I've got so many tickets that I bought for family and such. Tell me this is not shaping up to be a game where the Toronto Maple Leafs need to win. Just based on the storylines alone.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the passion that Lorentz has said, because he's even talked about, stories with his dad as well. Benoit playing in, being from Laval, playing in not necessarily technically enemy territory right now because he's on the other side right now. And we also didn't even mention Nick Robertson, who cracked the lineup, where he's missed the season opener every single time. So for him to get into the lineup, there are a lot of interesting storylines, both for like players' careers, feel good moments, and everything like that, because those are the stories you want to tell. Those are the moments you want to relive every single time. Lorentz already has his cup, so he's going to come in and do whatever he can to try and replicate that success with the Maple Leafs. Robertson, great and fantastic preseason, but now, because you earned that spot, you got to keep it, because now you got still other players breathing down your neck. What's going to happen with Pacioretty if he starts to tail off as well? Is everything going to work out for him? We've come to be big fans of Simon Benoit last season. And I think the biggest, tell-all moment with Benoit was that game against the Kings, and he's holding two players back with both hands. And it kind of reminded me of the Dustin Byfuglien situation where he's just taking on two guys at once and he's defending off two guys. That to me instantly, put Benoit at the top of the passion wagon, as our good friend Alex, Hobson would say, being that type of player, getting into the face, setting that tone. And guys like Benoit, not necessarily Philip Myers, who was taking notes from Ryan Reeves on how to fight.
Yep. I'm glad you mentioned that.
You want to see not necessarily be a physical presence, but to stand up for yourselves, set the tone, and engage in those battles and come out on top every single time. I know that, Pacioretty does have a history of, playing with a little bit of an edge as well. He's had looking back on his stats and writing a story about him when they brought him on as a PTO. He could play the body. He's physical. Now you just want to see that consistency. Can his health hold up? I think that's going to be the big statement for him right now. So there are a lot of moving parts right now to this roster about in terms of like the new additions coming in. It's funny because we haven't even mentioned Chris Tanev, because in the preseason we saw what Chris Tanev did, and it's just like, yep, it is what it is. We already know what he's going to do to be that backbone, that calming presence with Morgan Riley, where it could take a little bit of pressure off him. So,
which is fitting too, because he goes about his business quietly. So us not talking about it is actually very fitting, considering how he does his line of work.
Exactly.
I wouldn't be surprised right now. We talked about betting DraftKings. Go on there right now. I would put money down on Austin Matthews for a goal. I would put money down on Nick Robertson for a goal. I have a feeling. Throw it down there. See what you can do. Nick Robertson, I guarantee you will pay big. He'll probably pay 4 or 5 times your money. So throw a couple units down on that. But we're going to close it out here shortly here, Peter. But last thing before we do, there was some news that broke today, this morning, whatever you want to call it.
Hours before we jumped on here.
Dennis Hildeby was seen coming off the Leafs bus. He was arriving in Montreal. and obviously questions and speculation started swirling. It was reported later, just shortly after, that Joseph Woll is feeling some lower body tightness. Not the start you want if you're a Leaf fan, but at the same time, it's more precautionary. I think they're holding him out. It's game one of an 82 game season. You want him to be ready for playoffs, so why not hold him out? You've got a guy in Hildeby who was a stud in the preseason, just played out of his mind. And then you have a guy who just won a cup with the Florida Panthers, has been a major part of a couple teams over the last couple of years in Anthony Stolarz, and two of his current teammates had this to say about him. Again,
Good thing you're bringing that up.
Again, yeah, thanks to Mark Masters for this. Mitch Marner says, I was with my dad and we walked by him in terms of when they first met Anthony Stolarz with the London Knights. And we both looked up and said, holy shit, that is a behemoth of a man. Now you're happy you can shoot on him in practice, not in games. So, I mean, just commentary in terms of, like, again, going back to the London Knights ties and Mitch Marner and Anthony Stolarz. And then Austin Matthews came out and said this about Anthony Stolarz. He definitely takes up a lot of the net. He's pretty noticeable coming down. It's pretty noticeable coming down and shooting on him. He's pretty good at reading the play, I find. When you think you have the opening, he's kind of baiting you to shoot it there. He's a really smart goalie. So one of the things that he worked on with Hildeby in training camp as well is just reading the game and being a goaltender of that size and that stature and being able to move that the way that he can. I think this is a good move right now, is getting Anthony Stolarz in for game one. He's fresh off his Stanley Cup. This guy wants to win, and I'm excited to see where it goes. I think this is going to create a competitive goaltending battle between the two. I think you can have a 1A, 1B, just like the Boston Bruins have had over the last couple of years, and you won't have to rely so heavily on guys like Joseph Woll, on guys like Anthony Stolarz to basically steal games until you get to the playoffs. And I think that's when you're going to have two goalies that are healthy and ready to play, and it'll certainly help the team in the regular season and come playoff time.
Yeah, and there was also another player that spoke highly of him. His former teammate, Sam Reinhart, said that he has a good chance to be that goalie for their organization that they've needed. And this is a former teammate speaking highly of Stolarz. And I included that in my recent piece on, 4 things that we learned about the Leafs in the preseason. And hopefully the steady goaltending can continue when Joseph Woll is healthy, because this is the exact same thing we were talking about, is Joseph Woll's health, which, you saw him play one game, didn't see him play until the game against Detroit. So you had to wonder, is he dealing with something? Now there's this kind of, don't want to speculate too much, but this lower body tightness may have been something that affected him before. I don't know, but they're saying that he's out because of that right now. And, hopefully this isn't something that could be a continuing trend, because this is what Maple Leaf fans feared. You saw the reaction when they saw Dennis Hildeby, the news that Elliot Freeman broke about Dennis Hildeby, and then all the fans were like, oh, great, here we go. This is exactly what we talked about in the offseason about Woll staying healthy. But one, is great to see Hildeby. I don't think expect this to be a long-term thing. So it's great to see Hildeby come in. And if he does get into that game against New Jersey, fantastic. Or if Woll can still play against New Jersey, great. I think this is just one of those momentary things where you just need to body up. But again, this is what we mentioned about Dennis Hildeby. He had a great performance in the preseason. Now he's put himself on the map as a potential call-up should something happen, like we're seeing right now. And the fact that Stolarz is coming in, again, he was absolutely fantastic in the preseason. I believe when I broke down the numbers, he had decent save percentage overall in those games. In all situations, Stolarz had a .964 save percentage. So pretty damn good overall. If he's able to still provide that level of consistency going forward, if he's able to be that big body presence where nothing's barely going to get by him, great, because the Maple Leafs don't have a body like that. And there were times, I think, in the past where they went up against Stolarz, they kind of had a bit of trouble because of that. So now that you got him on your side, now that he's taken up more of the net, that it makes it more difficult for the opposition to score. I mean, that's exactly what you wanted. And like you said, hopefully this could create that tandem like it did with Olmark and Swayman, and then maybe Woll and Stolarz could feed off each other, have that bonding experience where, you could probably have like one of those sellers that they have at the end of a game where they feel great about one another, where if one guy goes in, the other guy could go on the bench, take a night off, and then vice versa. Everything's going to work out because you got two steady guys and reliable guys in the crease right there. So interested to see how that's going to happen. But yeah, the news was kind of, bit of a question mark. Everyone was concerning, but it doesn't seem like that in terms of Woll's health.
No, absolutely. Again, they're saying it's precautionary. Let's go with that. Let's hope that's all it is. And hell, let's ride with 3 goalies. Anyways, Peter, we are October 9th. We are hours away from puck drop on the Leafs 2024-25 season. If you had one bold prediction to throw out there for the Leafs season, what would it be?
Leafs make the conference final. I think with Berube behind the bench, I think with the team that they have, with the moves that they could add later on, if they do free up a little bit more space by moving out some contracts, if they have a little bit more wiggle room to add at the deadline, I think this is a team that can go a little further than the first round, more so than in previous seasons.
Okay, I like it. Well, mine, if Robertson stays healthy, he stays with the Leafs. I see Robertson as a 25-goal scorer.
Yeah.
I'm going to add to that and say I think Austin Matthews posts 60 again this year. There's 85 goals right there. And with every goal that the Leafs score this season, we are going to contribute 13 cents on behalf of the Johnny Gaudreau, Matthew Gaudreau. We haven't really decided where it's going to go yet, but it's going to go either to one of the Gaudreau families or Matt or something to in relation to stopping drunk driving. And we are going to do whatever we can to support. If you want to join us on that effort, please reach out, DM us, let us know. We'll get you involved. We'd love, the more we can give, the more the better we're going to feel too, right?
Absolutely.
We want to help out wherever we can. That said, we have a lot of exciting stuff coming up this season with the Hockey Podcast Network, as well as Sticks in the Six, Indie Ale House. We'll be getting to that hopefully over the next couple of weeks. Break that down a little bit for you, and maybe you can share a drink with us when it's all said and done in Toronto. Until then, it's game day in Montreal. It's Wednesday night, middle of the week, hump day. We're going all the way to see the Toronto Maple Leafs open the season 1-0. Matthews tucks, Robertson tucks, Leafs win 4-2. Book it, and let's kick off the 2024-25 NHL season with our Toronto Maple Leafs. Until next week.
I was about to say 4-2 win is your prediction.
4-2 win is my prediction.
You know what? I'm going to go one step further. I'm going to say 5-2. I'm going to say there's going to be an empty netter towards the end, and they're going to capitalize with the goalie pull to try and get 2.
So there you go. Peter's saying take the puck line as well. Leafs minus 1.5. Anyways, I'm sure we'll talk about this next week. Until then, thanks for tuning in for this afternoon episode 175 of Sticks in the Six.